Okay, so this video, how do you know when you should trust your instinct? They always tell us that we should trust our gut instincts. And sometimes they say that women are the only ones that have gut instincts. I don't know if it's true, but when do you go with your gut instinct? Even if you know your heart might not be in it, but you just feel that it's the right thing to do. How do you know when your gut is telling you something and you keep ignoring it and keep ignoring it and keep ignoring it? Sorry, I think there's like a wood chipper outside. They say that we all have an instinct and that it apparently derives from our gut. Sorry. If we fight against this, whatever gut instinct is, does the universe sort of start working against us, so to speak, and forcing us to go a certain way? What do you think about that? And if your gut instinct is telling you something and your heart is telling you something else, who or what do you trust? I know they say as we get older, that trusting the heart is done. Don't trust your heart for anything. Trust your head. But they never include instinct, unless that's like included with your head. I don't know who watches these, but when I first started making them, I made them for myself in the hopes of just getting things out, having a sort of stream of consciousness, having somebody to talk to, because it's therapeutic to get things off your chest. It's like that weird thing they tell you to do, to write a letter and then burn it and then throw it away, right? I never really found that appealing or satisfying, but I do this for me and the off chance that maybe somebody else can identify it or make heads or tails of it. And I think that's the way it should be. So I'm kind of throwing this stuff out into the blankness of the abyss. And I was driving today and I just started thinking about instinct and when to walk away. And how do we know when we should do that, especially if we feel we've given something our all, or we've given something what we knew to be the best of us? Is that the barometer with which we stick things out? And if we do that, does it become more harmful than it should be because we are ignoring what the universe is telling us or our instinct? I guess if you're not religious or spiritual, I guess you could say it's spirituality, but sorry, hi fourth wall, I didn't forget about you. I was just driving and I was thinking a lot about, as human beings, we are only capable of giving what we know, and giving without reciprocation, because that's the good thing to do. But quite often we find ourselves depleted or, questioning what things we choose to accept, or we start listening to what I call the peanut gallery, which is we start listening to every other voice but the one in our head. And that's not good, because you should never be influenced by anybody's voice except for your own, ever. But our voice, it can get quiet at times. It can get muted because life happens and other voices take over. I think I'm wondering if the universe is giving you every possible reason and every possible sign to walk away. But fear of the unknown, fear of life, fear of who we grew up with, fear of how we grew up, fear of falling back into a certain way of life makes you ignore your intuition, if that's what is that's speaking to you. And I've always felt that I was pretty intuitive, and I'm pretty good with reading people's energies. And I don't think I'm a psychic by any means, but I definitely am very wired into other people, especially myself. And I have come to know and come to probably realize that we as human beings are really imperfect people. And I think that hopefully the best we can do as the years go by is evolve, even if it's a tiny little bit, and move forward, or try to right the wrongs maybe that we did in the past if they caused us pain. But sometimes you just can't predict stuff like that, you know? Sometimes life just happens, and you know, if you're a reactionary person, which I'm trying to be less of, very much so, I'm trying to be less reactionary, but if you are a reactionary person, reactionary is not always bad, because you also pick up on the goodness. But if you are a reactionary person and intuitive, you tend to assess situations better or more clearly than other people. And that's not a boastful statement. It's much more of it's just a certain way you're wired. I find that it comes from going through some sort of a traumatic event that's bigger than yourself, whatever that may be. Your brain is kind of rewired to assess situations on a bigger scale, whereas most people are very insulated. You know, they're very insulated in their world, their problems, their immediate needs, which isn't a selfish thing. But if you only focus on the insulated and you forget the exterior, then you risk giving out an energy that maybe you are not comfortable with or aware of, unless somebody else picks that up. And it's usually not with malicious intent. It's just that your brain can't function that way. I know this is going to seem like a lot of, I don't even know. And it makes sense to me, and it makes sense in my head because it was what I was thinking. And I wanted to come and get it on film. Because I've always had a very good instinct. I've had a very good capability to predict things. I'm not a psychic by any means, but have I had foreshadows of things happening and they happened? Absolutely. Does that mean that I'm a psychic? No, it means that I'm just very plugged in. However, when it comes to me personally, I can be blinded because I know what it's like to have nothing and to feel voiceless, and to feel directionless, and to feel like you don't matter and nobody wants you and nobody likes you and you're just forever an outcast. So I approach situations almost from a shelter mom perspective, which is a place inherently of compassion. Blessing and a curse. Curse because, well, blessing, you love hard. You love really hard. Everybody you come in contact with, hopefully, that deserves it. There's nobody that can love like you can. You will put yourself last for the rest of your life if you know you can make somebody else happy or you can help somebody else. Cross to bear because you lack the selfishness in a positive way that those more insulated people have on a daily basis. And you don't realize that by ignoring yourself, you're slowly getting, you're getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And that thing where they said, how are you going to love somebody if you can't even love yourself? I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think all of us are on a path to loving ourselves, and I think most of us don't ever get that. I think we'll like ourselves a lot. If we have a good hairdo or our makeup looks good that day, we'll be big fans of ourselves. We'll think we look sassy and we're slaying our look, like today's look. I feel I'm slaying this look. What do you think? But having the self-respect for yourself and having a rational, logical sense of your own self-worth, that's the difference. I think, and I talked about this in another video, that when you start realizing maybe where you've slipped, you start seeing little spurts of things that if you respected yourself a little bit more, if you felt you were worth it a little bit more, you would have maybe chose a different route or gone down a different road. So, I think what I want to say with this is, if you are connected to what matters in life, like what really matters, and everything, or at least your gut instinct, is telling you, every fiber is telling you to walk away from something, to just walk away. But you've ignored it in the past, and good things have come, and you've ignored it in the past, and bad things have come. So how do you know when to go with it or not? How do we know when to trust that instinct or that inner voice? Which a lot of times, because of everything going on in the world, we don't even hear it, because it's so, everything else is just so loud. All the people that we come across in a daily basis, the things that we have to do, that inner little voice, we just don't hear it until we meditate maybe, or we have some moments. What do you do if you've lived a life of so much fear, but on one hand, you've lived a life from what you would say is tremendous breakthrough and opportunity from that fear, rising above that fear? When that moment in your gut hits you that says, stop, walk away, go this way. How do you know which time is the right time to go with that or keep hanging on? Because either way, you're going into the unknown, which is enough to scare a lot of people. I'm not scared by the unknown whatsoever. There's just this undeniable thing that I have. And it's like, some people could call it God. And it says, Jamie, you can't do enough. You can't do better. You can't. You've given it your best. Sometime you just, you're just such a perfectionist, or I am, that you're convinced that you can beat something, or prove your doubtful self wrong. But then there's the other voice that's saying, Jamie, there's nothing you can do or say or anything that will change this, or change anything, or change something. So stop and let it go. And whatever will be, will be. But just know that you've done everything you possibly could. Everything you possibly could. You gave it your best shot. And did you make mistakes? Hell yes, you did. Are you human? Yes. Were you going to give everything you have and not make mistakes? No. Can you control when you make mistakes in life? No. Can you control what people do with the mistakes you make? No. Can you give and give and give and give and give and give and expect the return to be equal in measure? Never. And that's important, because that can be very toxic. It's not right for us to expect each other to walk on water, to have all the answers, because we don't. I don't. I always say the only belief system that I believe in is a belief system that says they have no idea about anything. That's the only honest belief system. I have no idea what the future holds. I have no idea what I'm gonna do, who I'm gonna meet, what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna look like. None of us do. And none of us are perfect people. Every day we are going to say something that we wish we hadn't said. We're going to do something that we never thought we would ever do. And it's up to us to reconcile that with ourselves. But how everybody else reacts to that, if people hold things against you, if people just write you off, if people say, you know what, Jamie, you were great up until this point, but then that happened and sayonara. Can't control that. And I think that I've been very guilty of trying to control too much how things outside of myself are received. That's actually it's a common thing with performers. You'll hear that one of the most difficult things about being a performer, like if you're in plays or a singer, you could spend an entire year working on an album from your heart, and you put everything into it, your heartbreak, your fear, your just everything, your blood, sweat, and tears, and it means so much to you, and you talk about things that are so personal to you, and then you release it to the wild. And the vultures will do what vultures do. They will shred it apart. Maybe you'll have one that appreciates it. Maybe you'll have one that kind of likes it. But it doesn't take away from what you put out there. And I think that's the self-worth thing I'm talking about, and the self-respect thing. Because you're giving the power away. And I've done that a lot. I've given the power away because I felt unworthy, because I felt not good enough, because I was fearful, because I was lonely, because I was sad, scared. I've given my power away in the hopes that that void would somehow be filled. And even if it's temporarily filled, you still gave it away. And I need to take it back. And you need to take it back. And I think by taking it back, it takes the power out of the hands of out here. It takes the power away from the external, and it brings it back to the internal, where it should always be. And it's not easy, and it's gonna slip up because, again, we're humans. But it's really hard, especially in today's world where everybody is just so incessant on getting validated, me included. You know you're enough. You know you're good enough. You know you're beautiful and you're loving and you're funny and you're, all this stuff. But it's not enough. We need strangers to tell us it also. Why has it come to that? It's such a dangerous way to live. So it's no question that I guess today when I was driving, I started thinking about my gut instinct and things that I've been feeling and wondering the sources they're coming from, why the source is normally fear. And I know why it's normally fear, and it's because of things in my past that I haven't healed yet. And everybody has that. Everybody has things in their past that they haven't healed from yet, and those things are guiding their present right now. I think it's causing people to make decisions they probably don't want to, do things they probably don't want to, agree to things they probably wouldn't because of their past. Sorry, you guys know I'm sensitive to planes. I suppose if you're watching this, sorry, I know it's still there. If you're watching this, you can maybe sense where I'm coming from. It's a struggle. And it's okay. And I wish that fear wasn't what I immediately go to. But it is. And the only way that I can change that is over time, getting into new habits, having different reactions to things, not having reactions to things. But it's a day-by-day thing, and you need to have support to do that. And if you don't have that, or if you have something that's kind of causing it friction maybe, and people will interpret that as something completely different, by the way. And I think that's what makes it even more frustrating, because people will misunderstand that as Jamie's this, she's that, she's this, So on top of being misunderstood is you can't win. You can't win. Like I said, you can control what you put out there. You can clarify it as many times as you want. I can stand here and look into the camera and say, this is true, this is true, this isn't true, this isn't true. People are still gonna believe what they want. People they're gonna still see what they want to see. They're still gonna project whatever it is they're going through onto you. And the answer is not to take it. The answer is to understand the source through which it's coming, and maybe have like a Teflon, like a bubble boy kind of thing around you, and just don't take it personal? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't have the solution to that. Because guess what? I'm a human being. And I'm still figuring it out as I go. I try really hard to, if there's anything religious that I try to follow, it's do unto others as you want done unto you. Was that the exact quote in the Bible? I try. I failed many times though. Many times. And I'm still failing at a lot of things. But I never fail trying to think of the best way I can explain it. I don't perceive myself as someone who fails carelessly. When I fail at something, I examine it, and then I try to do better because I'm that self-aware. And sometimes I don't, and I'll make the same mistake again and again and again, and I might never get it right. But then you have to understand that a lot of us are the same way. So is it really fair to expect others, here goes that expectation thing again, or judge them based on the things that we ourselves haven't gotten correct? And does it all just come down to knowing our own worth, respecting ourselves, and knowing that each one of us is just trying to figure it out the best way that we know how? And by judging each other, by putting each other down, saying things to each other, hurtful things that we might not mean, in the long run, is that something that you're going to be proud of? Or is it something, because if you're not going to be proud of it, it's not going to help you grow. So look at it selfishly. Because remember I said, being selfish sometimes, it's not only good, it's necessary. Our gut, your gut, my gut instinct. It's talking to me out of my belly button. No, I'm just kidding. My gut is talking to me. But then so is this. This one's a little, you know. And then so is this. But this, since I'm almost 40, I don't really use that as a guide anymore. And that's not to say that I'm some heartless, cold snake. I can be. Oh, trust me, I can be. Especially if I feel an injustice has happened or an animal has been hurt that's innocent. The snake will come out, let me tell you. This is more like reserved at this point. It opens very, very, very seldom. This is always open. That's why it's all over the place. The gut, I don't know where part of the body, let's just assume it's our stomach, our belly button. That seems to be fighting with the brain a lot. And like I said, if I believed in anything, higher power, whatever, it has a way of telling you things that us as a human being will ignore. You know, it'll do something to make you question or stop and pause. You'll ignore it. Then it'll get a little louder. You'll ignore it. Then it'll get a little louder. You'll ignore it. Then you might need some like heavy duty gamer earphones because it's screaming at you. And at that point you are forced to make a decision. Walk away knowing you did the very best that you could do, being as flawed as you are and imperfect as you are, or keep fighting, keep trying to work through, and keep trying to go full steam ahead and ignore the fear. Ignore the fear from your past, from whatever it is. Just ignore it. How do you know which way to go? Either way, it will come to that point, like when you're boiling water. It will come to that point when you will like walk away, and then you put the top, and then you put it all the way up. If you're like making pasta, and then you're like, oh, it won't bubble to the top, it won't fizzle over. And then like 30 minutes later, you look over and the whole thing is like, you know, it's like splurting bubbles, and it's like, turn me down or take me off. That's what's gonna happen. And it's in that moment, I feel, you have to make a choice. Walk away, or despite every possible reason, every possible fear, every possible past bad experience, keep moving forward into the unknown. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.